It's been quite an adventure for me, at least. I've done this for a couple of companies, but this one is pretty unique. So that's why I'm here today. And then also, if you don't have an enterprise deployment, you might catch some like good tips and tricks, or just like see what it's kind of like in the day in the life. One of the reasons I was asked to come is because our service in particular has encountered a lot of things because of its environment, and the restrictions on it that you don't really come across in a lot of deployments, but it's really interesting to know about them, just for knowledge purposes. All right, so our topic is Tableau Operations. So this talk was created out of a lot of conversations and experiences in the field. So stories, which is what Tableau is all about. Think of this as a conversation. It's a presentation of programs that have been executed in enterprises or iterative approaches, where one of the outcomes is a learned lesson. So the whole point of this is I'm going to tell a story and tell about like what happened, why this became an issue, or why we did it, the points in between, and then kind of the lessons learned and the outcomes and what we overcame. And why am I talking about this besides like doing a training video or something like that? It's because I'm really passionate about this aspect of my work, more than really the product feature set, although I love Tableau, Tableau in general. I used to be an employee of Tableau for quite a long time. But this is something why I don't work at Tableau at this point anymore, is because I want to see how this stuff works out in the field and really get to know different aspects about stability, integration, and organization. Overall, so the topics that we're going to talk about today, the high level topics, are stability, integration, and organization. And really, all this highlights is overall the most meaningful lesson that I've learned so far to Tableau is that long-term success isn't the product. It's an amazing project. The developers built the features, and users may or may not find them or even use them. It's really building and operating a technical ecosystem that provides a consistent experience in a way where the value of it and the system impact is measurable and actionable. This is for those like long-term agreements where you're going to be keeping this product for 5 to 10 years down the road, right? This is really a refinement of methods and for automated computation as well. And think about these as kind of a routine. So the metaphor here would be, these are your daily routines. It's almost like keeping house, your favorite workout or like yoga practice. It's something you're going to be doing day in and day out. So for housekeeping, Mark has gone over this, but I'll iterate it again. Ask questions. I'm going to pause at the end of each section for questions. I will also take questions at the end. So the ones that are in between, I'm going to just like look at the open questions and speak to them. I'll also repeat them for you. And then at the end, the lines will be unmuted. If I think anything is going to take us off time, I'll answer it one-on-one offline as well. And I'll have that information at the end of this presentation. So this is also a 6-slide presentation. That's because I'm going to be talking a lot, so pay attention or not, but you might miss something. I'm also going to be showing a lot of content and trying to speak to that. So I'm going to be showing our DR plan. So you're going to see like the very elusive DR plan, one that's actually been tested. You're going to be seeing like some of our integrations. I'm going to be showing some workbooks. I cannot show our server. It's too sensitive information, and I can't, because I'm doing this on behalf of Accenture. you cannot see our servers. So unfortunately, I can't preach you an interactive, but what I've done is I've created that experience for you as much as I possible in documentation, and I'm happy to send that to you as well. So that's the compromise. Okay, so stability. Stability is something that brings comfort to anybody. It's true in our personal lives as well as our enterprise life, so at our jobs and with our BI applications. So once an organization decides to make Tableau as a BI offering, especially a standard BI offering, the expectations around that server fundamentally changed. It moves from an application to a service. And when that business starts depending on Tableau, that service, even within itself, begins to change. New terms start entering the service offering, terms like RTO and RPO, and I'll go over those and what those mean. You start to hear more like, what's the SLA? So the standard level of agreement. What's your ETA, expected time of delivery? And so there's just a lot of new expectations that are created to the service, and don't always expect these expectations to be voiced. For at least where I work right now, it's kind of was half. So some of them were voiced because we had kind of done this before, and it was a somewhat mature but not grown service. But a lot of things were unvoiced, meaning like I expect this server to be up 99.9% of the time. Initially, that wasn't voiced. I expect it to be available during these hours, not voiced. I expect to have the same response of that I get off of our more legacy BI products. You know, there's things like if you have Cognos or if you have SAP or if you have those usually have like a pretty ingrained service contracts around them. Those start to bleed in to the expectations that you're expected to deliver yourself. Okay. And these expectations are assumed and they're created because of the experiences from the other business intelligence or reporting tools. To the user, these are basic standards of operation. And something that we've learned as well as you grow, especially when you start to have like a managed service, you have to start sharing label pools. So you might not have control over your end to end. So if you're able to like spin up an instance in AWS and you can control all the networking around that and the machinery behind that, that is absolutely amazing. And if you have no integrations, even better. But at least for this environment, it's a totally enclosed, in its own data warehouse space environment. All the networking is custom for it. You don't control your own machines. You have to rely on another managed service for that. So you have to really understand and be able to how to communicate and understand these kind of pipeline operations. And I'll talk about that even later in the conversation today. So what happened? So when we started encountering this, we understood that we kind of crossed the bridge on the service, and what we are going to be doing is that we couldn't really go back, and because so many things were happening, and if we didn't scale, because we knew this was going to be a challenging, but if we didn't, we also learned that lesson too. Like you have so many emails that Outlook seems like your full-time job. You might have an outage when critical decisions are being made by the business, like financial decisions. Not a great conversation to have someone like very level executive call you and be like, no, you need to have this up and going within 20 minutes because we have decisions to make in the morning and tonight. Or you hit on high CPU and you don't know why. And you get questions about it, right? Why isn't this being managed? What's going on with this? Is it stable? Can we rely on it? Is it ready for mission critical decisions? These are things you have to answer like all the time. Also, remember how I said about not having a purview over your whole stack? Imagine if your VMs, like your application, Tableau application, running great until it starts having high load. And we have a question about that too. And you realize that what you thought was your enterprise Tableau server application is running on VMs that are not solid state, that have really low disk space, really low RAM, and you never knew because you thought they were allocated and spun up correctly, right? You thought they had all the networking and NIC cards in by default because you didn't even think about it. You just assumed like, sure, we're gonna spin up this correctly. No one checked the order. So I'm gonna talk about a lot of lessons. So around that, and that's why I'm gonna share some of the documentation with you today. So really what this all is about is going from a reactive stance when you, not only when you figure out this change, figure out that the expectations on the service has changed, and then you are experience that change and you're reactionary to that change, to what you have to start doing that is proactive in terms of supporting the business. So that's the story here. I'm going to take a couple questions. So one from Jasmine Greenwald. Are you working to make Tableau less resource heavy? Yes. Although we can't stop that train. So we know how quickly, and we have metrics about how we forecast how much disk space and how much CPU we are going to be using. And when we combine that with our concurrency of our usage, what we have is we have a make or break threshold date. So we actually have KPIs on this that we publish and we report out to executives. And so they should know, and they do know, like, oh, we're getting close to it. We're 6 months out. Now we're 4 months out. Now we're 3 months out. Maybe we should talk to Tableau about licensing at this point because we want to make sure we get the best deals. You know, money's money. Or maybe, oh, we thought we were 3 months out and now we went back to 4 months. Like, what's going on there? What did change? So overall, we try to make Tableau the CPU resource heavy, and it's mostly monetary. As of now, I think this is one of the leanest environments. I've been told it's crazy. We support about 12,000 users, and these are like analysts, so they're pretty heavy users mostly. And it's on only 24 cores. Wow, oof, yeah. So it's a little tight sometimes. So we try to make it as lean as possible. So there's another question from Gaush Shaikh. What tools do you use now to monitor Tableau server performance? We use Tableau's own monitoring service. We also use, we've used Datadog in the past, and then we also use New Relic now. And I'm going to go into that later in this presentation. I'm going to share with you actually how we've integrated New Relic. From the aspect of what have we built on New Relic to monitor and what we found valuable after like a 4-month process of lesson learned on it. And then also, what do we do to make sure that our users, meaning our service teams and our admin teams, know what's happening? Because if you get it doesn't matter if you have monitoring tools, if no one is consistently watching and their like action points don't resolve from those. That was something that we learned, and why we um, kind of took further steps in integration. Let's see. There's a couple more. Do you swap DR as part of the upgrading release? That's from Jeff Strauss. I'll answer that a little bit later. And we have some question about Tabmon. Is it worth it? Yes, if you use it correctly. I'm happy to talk to you, Tulasi Sarabi, after this on it. Tabmon is in like performance testing is its own like 1 hour 1 hour segment. Okay, so what were our lessons learned? One of our key lessons learned when we made this change is you need to sit down with whoever owns the service or whoever is having expectations with the service. And I think Mark has probably done this over at Apple. I know other folks have done this at the really large installations of Tableau. And it's something that might be looked over at a smaller, less, just like when you're not really thinking about it, but like use this whatever your stack is, like establish a recovery time objective and recovery point life so much easier because you'll have something to measure off of and you'll have I think my internet cut off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're back.
No, okay, great. Okay, so I think I'm sharing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I think I'm sharing it now. Okay. So I'm sharing bandwidth today. So establishing a recovery time objective is if your service goes down or it's not performing, if you have to take an outage, meaning it's not accessible to your end user, how much maximum time do you have? Ours is 8. And so that drives how we build out our DR, and it drives how, do we choose to add nodes to our production cluster and reboot, or do we just, hey, like we know it's not like a disaster recovery scenario exactly, but our production is toast, meaning it's not going to perform like we want. Do we just fail over to fail over, right? And that really gets to the question earlier, do you like rebuild your DR as part of an upgrade? Most definitely, we definitely revisit it. We have to check back through and understand. So it's part of our SDLC, so software lifetime development cycle, to release and say that this particular version, this hardware, this application is ready to go. We also include DR in all of our change cycles. I'll talk about our change cycles, and I think in a little bit later. And I'm going to share with you exactly our change template, and I'm happy to share that with you too. And you kind of see how we take notes and we keep everybody on the same page. Okay, so what's your recovery point objective? That means how old can your data be? So this is how often should you be backing up? Mark and I were talking about this before the call. He has to back up every 48 hours just because he has a lot of data. That's how long it takes to restore it. So that makes sense. We take backups every day, and we also time how long it takes to restore it. So what we've noticed over time, it takes longer and longer to restore those each of our DR environments because our server is growing. So sometimes that's good, and that's just things that we take in line and we add to our DR times. And you'll see in our DR plan, everything, we have minutes allotted to that, and we check back on it frequently. But we also do proactively clean our server up and move things off of extract to live if possible to get that timing down, because guess what? We still have this recovery time objective. Also, this drives our staffing and hardware, right? So if we have a recovery time objective of 8 hours and we have a recovery point objective of 24 hours, but guess what? Our server's too big to meet those, we're splitting up those instances. So, and so like I'm just talking about our critical tier 1, but there's also other instances where they're not as critical and they've been partitioned off, because to make sure that this particular instance maintains those recovery time objectives and recovery point objectives. Of course, this drives further conversations. Where do we host these? Do we have to purchase more licensing? What's the budget? Do we actually say, no, you can't drive an upgrade conversation? We might not be able to upgrade if we're taking too much space, right? If those additional features that Tableau is offering takes too much of our disk space, or we know it's going to be CPU intensive, we might not be able to use them in our upgrade, or we might not be able to upgrade for a month or two. It also will drive our architectural decisions around our process. Overall, build in those buffer. From the RTO and RPO, those high-level things, it's going to drive your priority queue. What is critical about this application? What is critical about the requests that are coming in? If your data warehouse goes down in AWS, it does happen, and you will lose your data in your own data warehouses. That happens too. What do you bring up first? So if you have to bring up, let's say your Tableau service, your Power BI service, your Python servers, your Cognos servers, all your database servers, like what do you pick first? So you make sure you know where you are in the queue, so you can communicate accordingly and understand those back-end integrations and front-end integrations as well. On the user side, a priority queue drives your expectations and bring stability to the staff and requests. So we add SLAs, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. And we add like what should you expect from this service? We follow through and try to provide the best customer support possible. It really is an experience to use our Tableau server, and that's how we try to provide it and position it and live up to that culture as much as possible. But to do that, we also have to do a fair amount on the back end for collecting business use cases, so we're communicating those expectations and making sure we deliver good on our experience. So I'll take a question or two. Is Tableau Online Hipaa compliant? No, it's not. The last time I checked, we've actually done a fairly extensive security assessment of Tableau, and I don't think it passed. I'd have to revisit, but it does not pass that. Okay. One from William Rocha, do you use ELK stack to monitor Tableau service? We don't, but we do use New Relic, and we do collect significant logging on it. And we do look for patterns, and I'm going to talk about that. Does Tabmon work on a Linux server? I think so. So Manish Kumar, good question. So at this point, should Tableau be considered a typical BI solution or a data discovery solution? If later, how is Tableau bridging the gap? Manish, I think from kind of what our discussion so far, I think it can be considered both. So we use Tableau for a fair amount of data discovery and just data mining, but it is also used as our day in and day out long-term reporting solution. Mark and I were talking about before we opened the bridge about how do we address these. So what we do is we can have a huge data lake, and then we start siphoning off and kind of damming those that data. And so we bring it in and we tune it. And some of that is going to, and we quarantine it, we check its data veracity. So veracity is one, has someone altered your data maliciously? Two, is it meeting our standards? Is it cleaned? Is it been like it doesn't meet just like what we need to use it for operations? And so then we use for that, and we drive that, and that's like our typical BI solution, right? Like those are going to be your standard reports. Along, 5 to 10 years ago, they would have been built out in a new solution, but they're now in Tableau, because that's just the reporting tool of choice now and what the team uses. But then there's a lot of ad hoc data reporting where you're going to just want an answer. That's more of data discovery. So it goes both. How much disk are you using with your 12K users? We use about 2 terabytes. Does TabPy need its own server to work with Tableau server? It doesn't, but it depends. And we have an anonymous. I'm new to Tableau to have 2 sites on the same server. How does this license work if it's used on both sites? Would it use 1 license or 2 view licenses? I'm going to leave that to Tableau because that seems more like a licensing question. Okay. Okay. So that aid stability. All right. So this is like the meat of the presentation. So I'm going to show you so we can talk. So I've removed our company logos and everything like that. So what we do, I think this is cut out. I haven't. Okay. So where the audio dropped. So this is our introduction of use cases. Closed loop source loops as much they can go to. Are you using bandwidth? Are you? Yeah. Sorry, someone just remoted into another computer at my house. Okay, so first of all, we tell our users what to expect and how to use the site, and we give them a table of contents. We also provide a list of everything we offer. So that's at the very end, in the list. So how to use it, that you can get billing questions and approvals answered, that you can also attach like how to actually like finish doing like submitting the request. We cover that too. And then, for example, and so we format that. We give all these instructions out. So this is something that our users, they kind of keep at the edge if and eventually they don't have to use it because they get normalized to the experience. But it's really good for that intro for someone who, your new service users, they don't know what you're about. And like we always have to think about this. Like usually doing paperwork is the last thing. So once they get this process in their mind, they're usually good to go. It just takes a little bit of a learning curve. So we're helping them bridge that learning curve. And then after that, we show them what we do as well is we do 13 things, right? Or 12 things actually. We answer Tableau, we answer questions, we do work support requests, we'll get you licensing, we'll work with you on server users, we're gonna do your data connection setup, so that's your networking, and then we'll help you create sites, we'll run the upgrades for you, we'll do the adding and extensions, integrating with different servers, and like adding APIs and integrations. And then we'll cover your incidents. Okay. And then this is an example of just like what it's going to look like. So this is what it looks like in service now. This is, again, it's a closed loop process. The web host takes these inputs. This is ServiceNow, like I said, and then eventually you get routed back. Well, within a click or two, you're routed back to this full form. So you have knowledge of what you're going to be doing. And then it also will route you back to this EBS request forms. We post our intake in Slack link and on the BI platform page. And that's another extension of that closed loop. And this is just so people don't get lost. This is also so people don't start making their own documentation. We don't want people to make their own documentation for our service. It creates a lot of confusion. And to show kind of the proof is in the pudding on this one, this intake form, although simple, once we fill in these descriptions and we have these special instructions change depending on what they've requested, this actually covers 100 applications and service items, which is pretty nuts for something that's so simple, Okay. So that's where we have with service offering, so the first item, and collection of use cases. The collection of use cases is super important. That's how you know kind of Tableau already does this for you, but I'm gonna show it. Tableau has their blueprint, and this is downloadable off of tableaus.com, so you can have it with your customer success manager. And we augmented it for us. So I encourage augment what works for you. And then we just hand this over to our customer success manager. We hand this over to our architects that will be understanding how to scale, and not just scaling Tableau, like how do we scale our whole enterprise data stack to work well. So we have a maintenance schedule. Hey, what kind of security do you have on this? There was a question earlier about Hipaa. There's GDPR to consider. There's PII data. There's the Hipaa data. There's all sorts of regulations potentially with your service offering. You want to make sure you're doing your due diligences. This is so one of those issues, security, you don't ask for forgiveness later. It's pretty strict, and you should take it really seriously, especially if you have to do any sort of brand management. This is your integrity. We also understand, are there any critical periods for your business? Sometimes, like for us, a recommendation from Tableau, schedule all your stuff at night. that doesn't actually work for this particular instance because it's a 24-hour global server. Our critical periods are not great for all of our business. So we don't do those Friday night updates or Saturday night updates because we're actually using our services and have to deliver things on those days. So, but we wouldn't know that if we hadn't asked our customer beforehand. So there's just things like that to keep in mind. Every service is different, but then, methodically work through it. All right. Something that really helped us aid in that stability is change management templates. So this is actually taken right out of our ServiceNow instance. I'm going to show you a real example of our change, of this change actually, in ServiceNow a little bit later. But this is just to get a good grounding on how we approach it. So in ServiceNow, for your changes, you have a short description field. And what we do is we have our application instance. So we run change management tickets for our dev, our production environment, production support, our production, and our DR. So we track all of that through the SDLC, and we have it all bundled up into a nice package. So if anybody needs to check back on the work or something happens and you're like, wait a minute, did this have an impact on our system, or did this work actually get done? We can see how it has been progressing and the different notes and everything like that. So that's been really useful. And so what happens, like for this, create a connection to Qubole, ODBC, DSN. All it would change is this would be from production. This might be DR, production support, and so forth. It keeps it really easy for multiple people to work through these. Then we always have something that drives our changes. This is like a really hierarchical approach. We always have something driving our changes so we know and are able to track the value of it and are able to track the timing and the expectations around it, except emergency changes. We always include simple things like, sometimes you mess up, is this a correction, yes or no? We have a change advisory board, and they want to know those things just to understand, hey, like maybe there's extra support they could offer. That helps make sure that we're addressing this the right way. We can limit these changes. Then we provide a description of the change. Why are we doing it? A calculated change risk. So this takes into consideration everything that's happening in that data stack at that time and across the enterprise, and says, hey, like this has low, moderate, high risk of changing. Like if you're in a tech freeze, let's say you run a retail business and it's Black Friday, any changes you make, probably going to be high risk. What's it going to be for the business? So is it going to impact their business during this change? Maybe. For this one, it was low. And then how are we going to communicate? What's the outage impact to the instance? So this case, we were going to do this during our standard outage window. And during that, we have a standard way that we communicate. It's through a broadcasting service, and our users expect, and we communicate this to our change board, that they'll expect our users will expect a change within 24 hours, 1 hour in advance at the time of outage and at the end of that outage. And this decreases a lot of those questions around, let's say we have, going back to our business use case, we collected those, we established a cadence of service maintenance with the businesses and for the service. And so if they say, okay, well, you can't do this, we can say like, well, this is our standard outage window. So then you can start from there and start finding a win-win with that solution. Sometimes they might delay what they're doing, or sometimes, we might delay for a couple of hours, this change. It really depends. We know how important it is for the business at this point. They were about to launch a product. They needed to have this pretty quickly. And what I showed you, this is our production, but we show when we tested development and who did it, and who did QA, and so forth. We also, through doing that, we find, are there any impacts? And do we need downstream testing? We always have a backup plan. Something messes up, you need to remove it. We keep our servers, our goal is to keep our servers as clean as possible. That limits that disk space usage. And if we have any dependencies. And then the last thing is basically a roster. It's saying, okay, if we have to contact someone like the business or the technical approver, who's usually a manager, like, who do we contact? Okay, who's executing these changes? These are going to be ServiceNow and assignment groups. This helps just kind of get together like a telephone list or an email list of who's doing what. Overall, the lesson learned from change requests and why we do this so rigorously, because we used to not do it, is it really helps. And we're able to really follow a good journey and path for all of our changes. And I'm happy to talk more about changes offline. But when we do these things and we change, we have a really good sense, is this an acceptable risk to take or a heedless gamble? And we're not launching with our fingers crossed with what's happening with our critical production instance. We know what's going to happen. We've tested it. And we have one-page solutions so that if something happens during that change, it's simple. It's a one-page, you know what to do and you know why, right? This has cut down a lot on our change management time, and helps us meet those SLAs. So we have a 99.99 up rating. So that's something that we have to keep, and it helps drive that.
Alex, the process.
All right.
You have about 50 minutes.
I can't hear you. Sorry.
Sorry.
And then
yeah, you have about 6 more minutes.
Plan also, so description, and I'm happy to go through this as well, but we've actually run this. We know how long it takes, and we take hours and labor. And I think I'm coming up onto time, so I'm going to rush through this. We have a global security assessment. Those are like, what's happening and what do you need? So overall, good decisions that we made was integrating into request queue, running additional integration with monitoring tools,
Alex, I cannot hear you anymore. I think we got some technical challenges. I cannot, probably we lost the presenters, unfortunately. Alex may have to log in again to the Zoom. Sorry for technical challenges. We're all working from home. Yeah, Alex, you're back? Now you're back.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so what we particularly chose was New Relic, and this was after choosing Datadog. These are what we add. And so how do we do this? It's because what we saw is what our server was, like the alerts that you get by default when you configure your Tableau server, they're good, but they weren't fine-tuned enough for what we wanted to. So when we do this and we start tracking.
Can you reshare? Sorry, Alex, can you reshare?
Oh,
I cannot see your share. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Now it's back. I started coming back. Yeah. Spreadsheet.
Okay.
I see it. Oh, it's gone again. It is gone again.
Sure. Okay. Here we go. So is it there?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. What we found is they're just not tuned quite enough. And so we consistently ping it with a New Relic. And this is the payoff for it. When we do host reporting and things like that, we actually detect network latency. And when we do that, we have a better sense of what's coming down the pipeline. Where this paid off, there was a critical break of a network circuit, and we actually knew about it ahead of time. Now, we weren't able to do anything about it, but we knew it to we knew something was happening. And then we also are able to know, oh, are we using how much CPU, how much? And that also helps lead our discussions. So when we do that, we're able to just get a better sense of what's happening. And then we are able to have documentation. I'll show you what it looks like when we integrate this. So we integrated New Relic with Service Now. So this is this is through webhooks. You have your machine name, you know what to go after. This is something that happened just the other day. We know we're using a lot of CPU, and now we have active conversations about, do we need to expand our licensing? And what's the value? Like, why do we need to do that? Well, we're consistently hitting our CPU. We don't want to be doing that. It means we need to actually change probably our licensing long term. So that's where we're communicating it, measuring to communicate the value. If you want to keep this a critical one service, we need to add more CPU, and that leads to budget discussions. So I am way over time. So I'm going to stop right here and take questions. I might have to do this next month too to finish up with this integration. And let's see what we have. This might be TBD, to be in the future. So a question from Vladimir Neto, is this template available? Sure, yeah, contact me afterwards. For any example documents, I'm happy to distill them for you. And I've done a fair amount of that work already. Asking from Bin Tone, are there nice process that set expectations? Are there things you explicitly state that you won't do for your customers? Yes, there are definitely things we won't do for our customers. One, we won't write their custom SQL for them. Two, we need them to be somewhat proactive in sometimes installing their own hardware for Tableau desktop and so forth. There's things we'll communicate and facilitate, but we're not for some things, we're only the service admin, right? We're not people like, oh, you need to make sure this connects. Like, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of weird questions that hang up. So like anything that can hang up how the gears work. So really anything that's not within that scope of those initial questions that I showed you, those 12 things, if we do them, it's a favor. And we are always able to back out of them as well. One from anonymous attendee: what kind of site project and structures do you follow for your organization? Do you use projects managed to manage security? How do we maintain a self-service BI model and traditional BI model management with our Tableau server? That's an excellent question. I'm willing to do another presentation on this, and I'll also show you very quickly what our site building methodology is. So one, we always have a community site, and our methodology behind that is keep it simple. All the server users in the server instance are members. We keep a limited number of projects. They're limited. We only have 3. And then the main content is found with just in 2 clicks. So like I said, I can't share our servers, but this is a screenshot of our projects here in our community site. They are the default. We don't use it. The licensing and service, and it's hidden. The licensing and service information. And what are we doing with our published proof of concept? So this is people that they're not ready to commit to a site, but they still need someplace that's secure to publish their stuff. We put them in there. We also have an archive in there. So we trash everything when we're done. And we can guarantee to our users that that's exactly what we're doing. Then in that second level, we also offer that closed loop thread for resources that we've talked about through this whole conversation. It's in our ServiceNow, it's in our Slack, it's in our linked, it's in our everything that we do. We try to keep it a closed loop. So for our community site, we have a desktop licensing workbook. Users need to look up their licensing. And right now, we don't use master keys. And most folks don't. You have to have, so this is your license key. This, if you have one, it populates here. You can see with my example, it populates. Don't use my license key. I'll know. And then if you don't, this is if Tableau has provided one, you can activate your temporary keys there. So that's to give you bandwidth. So your users can get off and going on their analytics, and while in the back end, you're shuffling around all the paperwork and service requests to actually get them licensing. We order licensing once a quarter. And then we also provide install instructions. Again, it loops it through, takes it back to ServiceNow. And then if they already have it, if they need to install it for the first time, there they have it. If they already have this temporary key, and let's say they come back for their licensing key, it kind of gives them some instructions too. So we've actually we use Tableau resources. This stuff is on Tableau in the KB, and we post it. Okay, so a site methodology for those individual sites. Our culture going in a good direction, but your team must come to a conclusion regarding that BI culture and their definition of self-service. Everyone's self-service is on a relative spectrum, and it's for you to decide what that means. So it might be that you give your users no information for them. Think about it kind of like when you go to a restaurant. Are you going to give them a buffet, or are you going to give them like the fine dining experience? It really depends. It can change per instance. So like this is more like, I don't know, like not fine dining, but it's like, you know, a nice meal for us. For other instances, it's a buffet totally. They have to go figure it out on their own. We also try to passively teach new site admin good habits. Assume new site admins know nothing about Tableau. So we're going to teach them about folders. So this is the basic setup in all of our new sites, what kind of projects they need. We're going to teach them about permissions, and we want to get them going as soon as possible with groups. We want them to search for knowledge and ask for questions to expedite that learning curve, essentially. So we don't want them to do a bad habit. We're going to tell them what the default folder is all about. We have an example project here. So what is a site? What's planning a site? What's your site roles? How do you add projects and move content? These things all link back to Tableau articles. We're not writing these articles ourselves, and we won't. We try to keep our resources and our paperwork, digital paperwork, down to a minimum. We also enforce the idea of an archive. This helps us clean our servers and understand like what's the value of particular components of work. Another question, do you receive the right to reject poorly built content? Sort of. And who decides? So this just happened the other day, so I'm glad you brought it up, Vladimir. Yes, we can reject poor content, but what we do, it's usually with extracts, and so we will disable that extract until that user revisits that SQL. Just the other day, I had to crack down on some folks. Their SQL was taking too long, and it was getting scheduled, and there was like some weird errors coming up. I'm happy to talk about how we do that actually on another one of these. But overall, yeah, we do. And so who decides? Well, it's us, because we always have the right to refuse extract and querying and loads on our server. And then, but we don't do it. We do it in a negotiable way, like a win-win way. Like, we do want to take on your work, but let's work with you and teach you best practices. So that's where, going back into our service model, if we see that happening, we might loop back and enter a service request that says, we're going to offer you and support you on this desktop modeling, right? Like, how do you tune this on the desktop? Then how are we going to tune it on Tableau server and use those functions and features that, you know, development has built in for that. And the reason we always want to get this into our queue is because it's really important to communicate up to your leadership how much time it takes. Like, I'm sure tuning SQL can take, especially in Tableau, can take a lot of time. And so you want to be able to communicate how long it's happening, the value to your company about that. In case you need to add staff, ask Tableau for more help, or get budget for get services or something like that, right? Can you demo using New Relic for monitoring Tableau server? I can, but I can't today. Tron, good presentation. Looking forward to the next one. Do you have a blog or something public that we can follow? Unfortunately, I don't blog. I actually don't share a lot of my content. Before now, I actually try not to add content to the community because I feel like there's a lot, but I will add this stuff. And Mark has looped me into his blog. So if you follow Mark, you can probably find me. Do you have any samples or templates you can share? Yes, I will share those as much as yeah, I'll share them for sure. And then I'll take 2 more questions. Any quick onboarding documentations for system administrators that only have 4 hours a week to administer 6 different 3-node farms and haven't used Tableau before February? Corey, oh, do I? That is what we do every day. It sounds like you have a similar constraints that I have. You can't spend all day doing Tableau administrator. So yeah, if you contact me offline, I'm happy to talk to you about it and share you relevant content. And then I'll just breathe the back because I think obviously I'm coming back to do the rest of this presentation. If you need to contact me, this is my name, Alexandria Scrivenich. This is my Accenture email. I can't give out my client emails. And I will talk to you over the phone too, but I'm not going to give out my telephone number. If you direct message me, give me your phone number, I'll call you, happy to chat, or I'll text you back my phone number too, and we can set up a time to talk. All right, so we are
Thank you very much, Alex.
10:03.
I think you got it. Yeah, I think you got end of the
thank
questions.
you so much.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much for all these joining us. So we'll talk to you next time. Thank you very much, Alex, for your awesome presentation. Have a great day. Stay safe, everyone. Bye.
Thanks. Have a great day. Bye.